It's a brutal murder that has shocked India. A 56-year-old man allegedly murdered his 30-year-old live-in partner in the Borivali area of Mumbai. The murder itself is not the story. It is the attempt to dispose of the body that has shocked investigators and the country at large. The accused in the case, Manoj Sane, allegedly cut his live-in partner into pieces and boiled the body parts in a pressure cooker and then fed these body parts to the stray dogs in the neighborhood. What gave away Sane was the odor coming in from the apartment. The neighbors alerted the police and they found something odd about Sane feeding the stray dogs in the area. It was something that he had recently started. The investigating officers, when they entered the apartment, discovered the mutilated and decomposing body of the victim, Saraswati Vaidya. Body parts were strewn in the kitchen and the bedroom. From where did Manoj Sane get the tip to dispose of the body by feeding it to the stray dogs? Another story that recently shook the nation's conscience was the Shraddha Valkar murder case. The body of the victim was chopped into multiple pieces, stored in a refrigerator and later disposed of slowly in packets across deserted places in Delhi, India's national capital. In another gruesome incident, Sahil murdered a 16-year-old girl in full public glare. Sakshi was stabbed over 20 times and then bludgeoned to death with a cement slab. Sahil and the minor victim were allegedly in a relationship and had had an argument a day before the grisly murder. Let's go to a much older case, this time from the city of Bengaluru. The Shakire Khalili case. Murli Manohar Mishra, also known as Swami Shraddhanand, murdered his wife by getting her drugged and then burying her in the courtyard of her own house. What goes through the minds of these killers? What makes them so brutal in these heinous acts? Just what goes into the making of such a psychopathic mind? Dr. Deepak Raheja, let me come to you. We're trying to understand the mind of a brutal, barbaric killer as this man whose story has been making headlines for days together in India. Whether you talk about the Shraddha Valkar case that happened here in the national capital, the case of Sakshi and Sahil in the recent past, where the woman was stabbed multiple times and then bludgeoned to death by this man in full public view, or the case of this Mumbai man who allegedly kills his live-in partner, then chops her body into multiple pieces, cooks it in a pressure cooker, boils those body parts and feeds them to stray dogs. I mean, to even say that this is absolutely mind-boggling would be a gross understatement. This is straight out of Hollywood movies that we've seen based on psychopaths. One is almost reminded of movies like Silence of the Lambs and, Hannibal, though those were about cannibalism. The point that I'm trying to make here is, this is not the first time we've heard of a murder, and this is certainly not the first time that we've heard of a man killing a woman he was in a relationship with. What is mind-boggling is the barbarism, the extreme cruelty that we've seen in these cases. So please explain to us, you're a psychiatrist, what, according to you, goes on in the mind of a man who first kills his partner and then treats the body in this manner?
Is obviously a man who's hugely debauched. He is sick in his head. Of course, this is a crime of, I don't even know if it's fair to call it a crime of passion, because the passion was consummated, culminated, and they were living in together. So
For
he
many
had the
years,
women
for many
with
years,
her
yes.
for many
Yes.
years. So for him to go to the extent of not just the murder, but the barbaric manner in which he butchered the body, in which he tried to boil and dispose the body, is depictive of a mind that is extremely traumatic. See, he's inflicting trauma, but there is a huge amount of dysfunction, psychopathic thinking, antisocial personality traits, and symptoms that gets him to process the guilt and living with the corpse of a woman that he loved over the 3 day period, trying his level best to butcher it in a manner and to dispose it off, is a very sick mind. And to my understanding, I don't think this originates impromptu. I don't think this is an impulsive act. When we do always a retrospective autopsy of the situation, and not the person, of course the person, but also the situation, we find that they were not just telltale signs, but gross cues that had been present in the relationship or even much earlier. And it's just that we choose to shut our eyes. I mean, the women, unfortunately, as we see, these incidences are more reported when there is a live-in situation which does not have social conformity. The woman feels like she's cut off. She's The support system is either cut off because the woman is judged, or it also suits such a perpetrator to cut all ties and let the person, the victim, live in a very, very toxic environment, which is equivalent to a encapsulated environment that he creates, which is equivalent to what we see in Stockholm syndrome. That beyond a point, then the victim starts identifying with the cause of the perpetrator. And these people classically have a Jekyll and Hyde personality. They are extremely abusive. And on another occasion, a few hours later, they'll be the extreme charmers and extremely charming, doing their level best to make their beloved feel extraordinary. And lo and behold, here is the victim, the partner, the beloved, who's totally confused, baffled in terms of what she needed to do. So the take home, the bottom line is that the communication line, the support system needs to be maintained. I think in all these cases, whether it was Shraddha Walker or it's this case or any other case, what really happens is that such a victim, I mean, such a perpetrator, classically in a manner cuts off the support system. And in the wake of no communication, no support system, living with a toxic man, a toxic relationship, when the line gets crossed, we don't even see that the line is crossed. From safety to intimidation to gross violence, which usually to begin with is no, it's verbal, and it's emotionally abusive, getting to a point where this is the result, and we have to deal with the
It
loss
takes the
of
shape
life.
of such gruesome violence. It goes without saying that these men who've perpetrated these unspeakable crimes are toxic, they're troubled, they're psychopaths, they're brutally violent. But it's also true that in most of these cases, the victims are women. What is it, that makes women so vulnerable to this level of brutal and unimaginably barbaric violence of the kind that we've seen in these cases? A lot is being said about live-in relationships, and I am very hesitant to bring in that angle of live-in relationships, because it's almost as if we are sitting in judgment of women who choose to be in live-in relationships. And I don't want to make this discussion or debate about that at all. But a lot is being said about, oh, it's happening to women at the hands of their live-in partners. So, I don't want to question anybody's choices. But at the end of the day, does the doctor have a point when he says that the absence of support systems can be a huge problem? And maybe that is another thing that most of these women had in common?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is the answer even I would like to give. Lack of support system, social support, lack of support from the government. Suppose, okay, this girl was an orphan and she might be looking for some support from the government, and she did not get. She fell into the trap of this man who was really, really much older to her, and she was vulnerable. So this is one girl, but at the same time, when we see other girls in the similar situation, so there is no support system from the family, because you are outcasted, because you chose to step out from your kind of a that um, arrangement, which so called social arrangement, and you started staying with a man, and or being in a relationship like the girl here in Sakshi in Delhi. So lack of social support, lack of support from the family, lack of support from the government, like shelter homes. Even I'll tell you, the other day also, like I was there in a shelter home, which was in a very pathetic situation. So lack of that also leads to such vulnerabilities, which we cannot deny. At the same time, I would also like to state that it is not about living only. I know this is, you mentioned that this debate is not about that. How many women suffer domestic violence at home? When it leads to such a level where the body is cut into pieces, and the kind of description you have given, that how he boiled it or not,
Just come in
that's
for
not
a
the only
moment.
thing.
If I could just come in for a moment, I agree with you completely there. And that is why I'm very uncomfortable with people, tarring live-in relationships with a black brush. Because how many marriages exist in this country where women are subjected to domestic
Yes.
violence
Dowry death.
routinely,
Dowry
right?
deaths. How many women are burnt alive in their
And dowry,
marriage?
yes,
Yes,
yes.
they are killed. We get everyday cases. Burning them alive is no less than cutting them into pieces. I mean, they kill and then cut into the pieces. Here, women is being burnt alive. I mean, in marriages. So we are not comparing, but what at the same time, it is nothing to do with living. It is only to do with vulnerability, which comes from lack of social support. I have seen so many cases, I'll tell you, where parents are calling us that our daughter was killed in a marriage, and so please send them to jail. The husband has gone to jail. The mother-in-law, father-in-law, the other people are not in jail. I said, why do you want to put them in jail? They said they were in connivance. I said, okay, so did your daughter raise red flags? They said, yes. She used to come to us, used to send her back. I said, then I will put you also in jail, because your daughter wanted to come back to you when she was complaining that she had threat to her life, and you were telling her, go back and stay wherever you are. You are also equally into be connivance. So lack of support from the family itself. They are also equal partner, because the girl can't stay in a marriage. You cannot tell her to stay. So here the case study might be different. The women overall are vulnerable in this country because of our social fabric, because of this institution called marriage, which says that by hook or crook, once you're married, stay there, live there. And once you're in live-in relationship, because it has no legal entity, they are not protected anyhow. Even when they are protected in marriage, they are vulnerable. When they are not protected at all, they are more vulnerable. What can we say? The women are vulnerable in this country, bottom line.
You know, I want to ask you two questions. Number one, in your experience as a cop, did you come across many such absolutely horrific cases of unspeakable violence of the kind that we are discussing today? I mean, is this something that's been happening for a long time, but we in the media are discussing it only now? Or, I mean, some people actually were wondering in my newsroom earlier today, is this a new phenomenon? Women's being killed and then their bodies being chopped off, because it's just so mind-boggling. So what does your experience as a cop tell you when you dealt with criminals and cases of heinous crimes and violence? What was your experience like? That's one. And two, sir, do you not believe that the full force of the law needs to be applied in such cases, and as the doctor said, that these cases definitely fit into the category of rarest of rare, and therefore these men, the perpetrators, once their guilt is proven in a court of law, deserve nothing but the maximum punishment?
You are rightly said that there was no time when such cases were not there. It was there. I had also investigated some of such gruesome crime against women.
Of course, we
But
all
the
remember the
frequency,
Tandoor murder case of the 1990s. I
yes,
guess nobody
Tandoor
can
murder
forget
case,
that. Yes.
yes, yeah. Now what happened? The cases are frequenting. either of that fact, or you should be convinced of one factor, that our conscious and our media in particular got active like not before. So credit also goes to awareness in media, that even a smallest things come, it immediately comes in the Facebook, in Twitter, some or other thing goes on. It creates a sort of a sensitivity wave in the mind at large in society. Now, considering this past and today, I will not deny that in past such cases were not there, but now this psychotic or erotic factor is growing in human as such. I would not say only in women or only in men. In humans, it is growing, and because of that, these such cases are frequenting, and through media, it's coming in a more enlargement before the society, which is a good sign, I suppose. Now, if you talk about the law, let me tell you, since the time 1986, we have enacted Dowry Prevention Act. Till the time 2005, we have enacted in our parliament Domestic Violence Prevention Act. 22 legislations we have enacted to protect women and children. Making law is one thing, implementing law is another angle, and third, very important, how sensible the society at large is. Now, for example, in this case, in Sadda Walker's case, he had at least sent some applications. Those were proved in court of law as a bad conduct on behalf of the accused. So, in such case, if even she would have made some clip, as someone said that police is not sensitive or NGOs are not being addressing, why to stop their local police station? You can address SP, you can address commissioner. I have seen some tweeters who even blame the Director General of Police, Home Minister of the state, Chief Minister of the state, even Prime Minister, and even sometimes the people talk on international media. So one shouldn't remain restricted. Your job, your prima facie responsibility is to make our system sensible. If they are not, and they should be punished. Though I'm a cop, worked 35 years, I still believe that the cops who are not sensitive for such kind of issues, they should be punished. They should be punished administratively. And there are certain cases where cops has a lethargic thing where the gravity of crime has increased. The cops were also made accused therein. For example, Marine Drive's rape case in Mumbai, if you consider, he was a cop and he was arrested and punished by High Court. Now, in these, we have to understand what in totality is wrong, and somewhere what's wrong. The main seedling is what? Our social and human values we forgot to respect. We do not respect the social fabric as it should have been. We do not respect the human value. And where is the provision for that? How can we repair it? Someone says that through counseling, someone says that through education, someone says that through law, someone says that through police machinery. Let us collectively think of it, and let's make a proper grooming situation where the improvement come as a large improvement on society at large. One last point I would like to mention. In our society, people hardly go for psychological counseling. But I tell you, even if your vocabulary changes and you abruptly started speaking some abusive word, you need to consult your psychologist. In foreign countries, as frequently the people go for counseling, we think, हाँ मैं क्या पागल है क्या मेरे को psychologist के पास जाने को बोलता है.
It's not taken seriously enough, mental health in this country. And it's so interesting. The cop on the panel is saying that. I agree with you 100%. And I'm sure the doctor on the panel will more than agree that mental health is simply not taken seriously enough in this country. You know, we don't treat it the way we treat physical ailments. If we have a physical ailment, we go to a doctor. But if there is an issue with our mental health, we tend to be dismissive about it, brush it under the carpet, not take it seriously, and in many cases, unfortunately, there is still a stigma attached to it for reasons that I cannot understand for the life of me.